I'm Simon Long. I'm a music lawyer. I have my own firm called Collins Long. And I guess music's one of those things that it deeply depends on the rights that underpin it, like copyright and so on. So that's probably where we start off by being involved in that. Being a failure. I always wanted to be the rhythm guitarist in James Brown's band, and I probably wasn't in the right place or at the right school to do that. And then when I left school, punk was happening, so there wasn't much place for blue-eyed soul. But I did discover that there are these things called contracts, and a little light went on, and I thought, now that's where I can get into the music industry. And I studied law and thought that I'd go and run EMI Records or something like that. Wasn't to be. I failed at that as well. But I did discover on the way that I really like working with artists and the talent, and that's sort of really where I found my niche. I think it gives me goosebumps is always when you see new talent, and not just when you see new talent, but when you see it starting to move. You know when somebody's got that little swagger and you know where it's going, then that's always great. What's interesting at the moment is there's a big debate about Spotify that's going on. You know, a lot of artists would like to pull their material from Spotify if they can because they don't get paid very much. But on the other hand, you know, if you go to Scandinavia, for example, and you ask people how do you find out about new music, it's Spotify. If you're not on Spotify, you don't exist. So I think it's a really interesting moment in time where those sort of streaming channels and music coming to us through streaming, you know, we have to engage with all of that and work out how to use that. What I tend to say to people is things like Spotify, it's a bit like the nuclear bomb. You know, it's here, but it can keep the peace. But if we don't know how to use it, you know, it can destroy us. And you know, so they're very interesting times in that way. One of the things in your question was you said, you know, there's not so much money in record sales, and that's why brands are getting involved. I don't think that's why brands are getting involved. It's just that I think, you know, artists have always had a value. People always want to be associated with artists, but I think artists that were perhaps in the past less happy about being associated with something or the other are seeing it perhaps as a necessity, perhaps also as, you know, this is actually a way I can get across to people. It may be that, you know, there is more scope for being involved with a brand because there's less scope for being on playing music on television. You know, it's whatever you need to do to get your music out, which is your brand, into, you know, to whatever you have to do to get that across a wider audience. I mean, obviously there are artists you look at and you think, why are you involved in that? It's just commercialization. And if you get the wrong brand, you know, it's a disaster. You know, I suppose, one of the things about fashion and music is about making things feel exclusive. You know, if you're, I'm I'll give examples because I'd be defaming brands perhaps. But you know, if you're a quality artist, you've got to be very careful that your tie-in is with the right sort of brand. You know, tying in with somebody just because they're giving you a load of money is a big own goal if it's not the right product. For me, I mean, I think one of the things that people perhaps on the outside don't realise is the amount of teamwork that goes into something, and you know, from sort of working it and the personal satisfaction point of view, you know, it's always one of the great things when you've worked with an artist for a little while, you watch it grow, you go and see them at Wembley, or, I mean, for me, I was involved in putting on a show at the Hollywood Bowl a couple of years ago. That was a little handful of us that made that happen, and it was a fantastic moment when you sit back and there's 17,000 people there on a beautiful full moon Saturday night in Los Angeles, and you look around and you think, yeah, you know, without our little team that wouldn't have happened. And you know, those are sort of nice moments. But most of what we do is you know, not very exciting. As lawyers, professional people, you know, it's about the paperwork, and you have to get that right. And those little moments when you get the goosebumps are why you put up with hours of paperwork.